Hello and welcome to MKF 2131 Marketing Decision Analysis. This will be the last segment of our lecture week 2. In the last video, we have talked about the customer satisfaction. We first introduced you with what is actually customer satisfaction, which is performance minus expectation. And then we take a look at some of the loyalty measures. And then we also take a look at some of the satisfaction matrix. So there are 3 different matrix if you remembered. So the first one, how happy you are, or the percentage of happiness, where it can be presented in a Likert scale, let's say from 0 to 5 or 0 to 10 and so on. Now the second one is actually willingness to recommend. And willingness to recommend is basically, it's higher level than what we have for satisfaction. It is the soft approach. And lastly, we also have the willingness to search, such that what's the percentage of you to willingness to search for the product should your main product or your intended product is not there. So the willingness to search such that you do not switch to other brands. Now in this video, we're going to look at Net Promoter Score. And in Net Promoter Score, we are actually looking at the willingness to recommend. So the degree to which customers will recommend your product or service. Now they are normally represented by 10 different scales in here. So say that, for example, they might ask you how willing or how likely you are to recommend MKF 2131 to your friends. Well, let's say if this is the case. So here's what we have. So if you have in Net Promoter Score, we are going to do, or we are going to interpret 9 and 10 as what we call the promoter. So it means that they are actively promoting your product and service. We are just assuming here, but say that it's true. And we are going to interpret 0 to 6 as what we call the detractors. Now, these are your sort of dangerous customers. You could be posting up social media such as Facebook, could be posting kind of harmful stuff that other people might read it. So they are called detractors. And we also have the passive, which is 7 to 8. So these are your customers who neither promoter nor detractors, so they're just in between. So if you look at this scale, we are quite conservative with our detractors and promoters. Why? Because the detractors taking up sort of 6 spaces, or in fact 7. 7 to 8 is your passive, which is sort of neutral point. So your neutral point is somewhere in between. We are really looking at the extremes in this case. We are looking at 9 and 10, which is the percentage of people who are likely to promote our products. So I'm just going to add this thing. So detractors, well, I'm going to just change that to my pen. There you go. All right. So in here, detractors are your... Okay, so let's say in this case, how do we actually get Net Promoter Score? Now, Net Promoter Score, as it says in the slide, is the percentage of the promoters minus detractors. So what is the percentage of detractors in here? Well, if you calculate this properly, which is just an addition from the percentage from 0 up till 6, it's going to be 25%. Okay, so I'm going to write here, the detractors is 25%. Now, I'm not a math smarties. I calculated this beforehand, right? So don't get surprised. So passive is 20 plus 25. That will be 45%. And obviously promoters, 20 and 10, it's 30%. Okay? So 45 plus 25 plus 30, that will equate 100%, which is what we want. Great. So if we come back to what is Net Promoter Score, I'm just going to write it here. The NPS is equals to the percentage of promoters minus percentage of detractor. So they are 30% of your survey that is actually saying that they are promoting, and there are 25% who are not promoting. So because of that, that will give me 5%, which is what you have in this score. All right, can you see that? Great. So that's the first step on how we actually calculate our net promoter score. Now in the next question, they're saying that suppose that there are 30% and 40% of promoters and passive respectively, and there are half of the detractors are leaving the company. Calculate the new net promoter score. Well, so if we are going to assume that this is a percentages, then obviously they are in 100%. So we can say that the total, let's say the total here, it's 100. Okay, let's just assume. And if we know that there are promoters, it is 30%, right? So 30 out of 100. And we know that our passive are 40%. Now what is the next one, which is the detractors? Because we need detractors value to calculate our NPS. Now, so for detractors, so the detractors is basically 100 minus 30 minus 40. Okay, so 100 minus 30 minus 40, that will give me also a 30%. So we know that there are 30% of promoters and 30% of detractors. So the current NPS, which is equals to promoters minus detractors, that will be 30% minus 30%. Obviously, this will give me 0, right? So next, they're saying that half of our customers are actually half of our detractors. So what's next? So half of our detractors are leaving. Half detractors leaving. Now, detractors, they are 30%. If you see here, there are 30% of detractors, and they said that when your detractors are leaving, okay, so your promoters will still be 30, your passive now what's next? So it will be the percentage of detractors. Now the detractors is actually half of our 30%, which is 15. So now my total, it becomes 85. So 40 plus 30 plus 15, it becomes 85. So how do you actually calculate NPS? Well, we sort of need to convert this into percentages. Remember, NPS, okay, I'm just going to write it on top. So your NPS formula is equals to the percentages of promoters minus the percentages of detractors. Okay, so if you see this, so you need to make sure that this is actually in terms of percentages. So here we haven't converted this into percentages yet. So we do need to convert this into percentages. Now you might have a question that why in the first one we don't have to convert that into percentage? Because they are already in the percentage. So anything that is over 100, that is actually a percentage. So in here, what we can see, our promoters become 30 divided by 85. That will give me 35%. Your passive equals 40 divided by 85. That will give me 47%. Detractors, so that will be 15, all right, because now we are having lower value. 15 divided by 85, that will give me 18%. So as you can see, these are our Net Promoter Score. So our new NPS, our new Net Promoter Score, it will be your percentage of promoters, which is 35%, because now it's inflated, minus 18%, that will give me approximately 17%. Okay, so I hope this makes sense of how the calculation looks like. Okay, so it doesn't really require a lot of high-level mathematical skill. It's just basically a simple general math skill that you probably picked up in year 10 or in year 11. All right, so the next question, which is probably one of the hardest question because you require a bit of what we call simultaneous equation. If you forgot about simultaneous equation, don't worry about that. Just have to watch in this video to get a bit of understanding on how you should do. So in this question is that if MPS or Net Promoter Score is -20 and 15% of the customers are passives, what percentage are detractors? Okay, so let's recap. I'm just gonna pull up my pen. Okay, so let's recap. So NPS, it's equivalent to the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors. Now for simplicity, because we're going to write percentage of promoters and percentage of detractors, let's call it Y and X, okay, so that it makes it a little bit easier when we want to reference them. So let X be the percentages of promoters, and let Y be the percentage of detractors. Now we're gonna have that. Now, as we know that MPS is -20, so they're giving us a hint that if you have X, which is your promoters, minus Y, it will give you -20. So that will be the difference of promoters and detractors, which eventually give you your MPS. So let's call this equation number 1. Now, the second equation, it will be coming from here. Now, we know that 15% are passive. Well, what's got to use with that? Now, if you remember from our previous video, which is right here, if you count detractors, passives, and promoters, this will equate to 100%. You are right. So what you need to do is you need to make sure get this 100%. How? So we know that if we add up our X, if we add up our Y, and if we add up 15, it will give us 100%. Exactly. So this will be equation number 2. So now we have everything that we need. So we want to find out the percentages of detractors. So we can start from 2. So I normally like to start with the hardest one first. X plus Y plus 15 is giving you 100%. X plus Y is giving you 85 because 15, I want to bring it to the other side. So I have to minus 15. I have to minus 15 right here as well. and I want to know, so let's put in X, which is 85 minus Y. So in this case, what they are saying is that the promoters are 85% minus the percentage of detractors. Okay, let's call this equation number 3. Okay. Now, next, we are going to use the equation that we haven't used before, which is equation number 1. So from, I can start from. So in this case, what I will do is I will write here, so substitute 3 into 1. Okay. So it will be X minus Y equals to negative 20. Now we want to substitute this equation 3 into here. So what we need to do is 85 minus Y equals to negative 20. Okay. So why do I get 85 minus Y from? It comes from here. X is equivalent to that. So we want to open this bracket. And we want to bring the numerical on the other side, and we want to bring the unknown on one side. So minus y will give me 2y. And 85, so 85 I have to bring it to the other side. So I have to do minus 20 minus 85. That is going to be minus 105. So y will give me 55.5. So y will be equivalent to 55.5%. So your percentage of detractors is going to be 55.5%. That will be your answers. Okay, so I hope the calculation will not scare you, because this is indeed, you have to use what we call a simultaneous equation. Okay. Now, if you have learned, or if you have touched algebra before in year 10 or year 11 or year 12, that's great. If not, it's relatively straightforward. So if you can just go to probably YouTube videos and explain about simultaneous equation, that should sort of takes care of that. Now we have looked at the calculation for Net Promoter Score, and we want to look at what are some of the advantages of using Net Promoter Score in this section. Now, if you look at Net Promoter Score, some people say that it is the most important customer feedback. There are a lot of praises about Net Promoter Score. Some people say that it's the best predictor of growth. This was Rich Held. That was in 2003 and 2006. Some people also say that word of mouth, or WOM, is accurate prediction of future growth of the company. And some of the corporations, including American Express, Telstra, Optus, Vodafone, they reported, or increasingly reported, NPS, or Net Promoter Score, into their reporting, because they thought that this is an asset to the company. Because when other people are saying that this is a good thing about the company, obviously it gives them future assets. But there are some of the limitations that you can think about. So for example, one of the strong or the key limitation of NPS is that the scale is not driven by theory. So there hasn't been research that's really talking about that. And NPS does not perform better than the American Consumer Satisfaction Index. Fair enough. And, okay, so if NPS is equals to 0, so what? All right, so let's remind us again what is NPS. So NPS is the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors. Now, so obviously, if NPS is equals to 0, so for example, it could be because of So for example, it could be because of MPS could be equals to, there are 30 promoters and 30 detractors that will give you 0, and they could be because of NPS equals to 50 and 50 that could still give you 0. Okay, there could be a lot of different factors, but if you think about it, there are different things that you can say every single occasion. So for example, in here, there are 30% of the promoters and 30% of the detractors. Okay, so it seems that they're quite a lot, as versus to there are no passives, but they are just like 50%. So they're all extremes. They are all either promoters or detractors. Now I think that this one might have more. You might want to see why there are quite a lot of detractors there. Okay, so this is what it means that when MPS, there are so many combinations that will give you MPS equals to 0. So when you look at the limitation of MPS, it's also technically something that we have done just now, which is in this particular example. So suppose there are 30% and 40% of promoters and passive respectively. Half of the detractors are leaving the company. So if you look at here, so promoters 30, passive 40, detractors 30. So current MPS is equals to 0. Okay. Now half of the detractors is leaving. So you are saying that promoters 30, passives 40, detractors 15. My new MPS actually grows. So if you look here, okay. So from the current to the new MPS, okay, I would say that this is old MPS. So if you look at current or old MPS versus new MPS, it grows by 17%. Now the question is that good? I would say that they're probably not, because the fact that, because all these 17% extra is because these detractors are leaving the company. So technically you have less customers to start off with. So you are not on equal footings right here, if you think about that. So just to conclude this week's lecture is that a fool with a tool is still a fool. So if you have a most amazing computer, but actually no one knows how to operate that computer, so what do you end up? You end up still on that point whereby you can't improve things. Let's say you have the most beautiful ingredient when cooking. You buy some organic foods, you buy like basically all the most expensive food, but you can't cook. So it's still a problem. But some people say, what I like is this one, but it makes disaster faster. So they thought that a tool helps them a lot in their daily life, such that, you know, I am untouchable. But technically, if you don't know how to operate this, then you probably just fall off of it. So just make sure that although you have all these tools, you need to proceed with cautious, because some of these might tells you different results that you probably do not want to do that, because companies are investing millions and millions of dollars for just a tool. So we need to make sure we use them very wisely. So in summary, in this lecture, we have looked at how firms measure their brand performance. So we look at brand association in terms of metric, the AAU, if you remember, like some of the matrix for awareness, some of the matrix for association, some matrix for usage. And also at the end, we look at how firm can measure its customers are satisfied. So we look at customer satisfaction. We do look at Net Promoter Score. So that's all for week 2. Thank you very much for listening and up till the end. I really appreciate it. And if you have any question, feel free to email me. If not, I will see you in the next video.